Welcome to CarePod, a safe place to educate, inspire, and renew the caregiver. Listen in with our host, Dr. Kiplee Bell, as she interviews different experts along the caregiving journey.
So I'm really excited today. It's important to speak to the caregiver, right? The one who is doing the active work. We brought a lot of thought leaders on the podcast, solution change makers, etc. And here's a guest that is walking the walk and also taking that pain point and empowering others during their caregiver journey. So I'm really excited to be here with Rick Henkin, the founder of Caregiver Mastery. So excited to dive in. Let's get right to it. Welcome to the Care Pod. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you for allowing me this opportunity, Dr. Bell.
Yes. So I ask every podcast guest their why. So I'd like you to just take us on your initial journey and kind of what brought you to this point.
Well, in January of 2020, my wife Sonia was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at the age of 65. I had seen in 2019, I had seen changes. She had no attention span whatsoever, couldn't even sit still for watching TV. Wait for the commercial, Sonia, wait for the commercial. She had to get up and go do something. And I thought, okay, I need to look into this. I did not want to take her to her primary care physician. I wanted a specialist. So I found the Pacific Neuroscience Institute in Santa Monica. They have a national reputation. Their entire focus is brain health. And I took her there hoping that they would just say, well, let's adjust her antidepressants. And that wasn't the case. They did their series of various tests, different tests, different tests showed how different parts of the brain processes. And they did the clock test, which I'm sure most of your people are familiar with. Sonia couldn't do it. She could draw the circle. She could draw the number. She could not draw the hands. And she stared at it for like several minutes. She started to cry. I started to cry. And she realized she had a situation. She had a problem. And in January of that year is when they officially diagnosed it as Alzheimer's. I was told it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and she went through several CAT scans and finally an amyloid PET scan. And that's when our lives changed, just like all of your listeners' lives changed. Everything was fine initially. Sonia would still go out of the house, walk around, do things on her own. One day she came home crying. She went to the market and she tried to pay for the groceries with her Target card. And of course, they didn't accept it. And she was embarrassed and ashamed and all of that. And it was easy to deal with at that point. Just those little memory problems. But what happened eventually is Sonia developed Capgras syndrome.
Wow.
Which is named after, I don't know if you're familiar, you may be, it's named after a French psychologist from the 1920s. It's an irrational belief that the person whose face she recognizes, which is me, is an imposter. And you can't shake that. You can't shake it with pictures. You can't shake it with other people telling her, no, that's your husband. And what would happen is we'd be sitting on the sofa. She'd look at me and say, where do you live? What are you doing here? I want you out of here before I call the police. And then she'd run next door to tell the neighbors about the strange man in the house. I'd take a walk for half hour, 45 minutes. I'd come back and she'd be crying, wondering where I'd been because she had no recollection of what took place. And that caused a lot of tension, just like for everyone. It caused a lot of tension. There was a lot of anger back and forth. And Sonia went to daycare. There's a special daycare here that's strictly for dementia patients. So that gave me a little bit of time. It gave her time. And this is a woman. We have 6 granddaughters. This is a woman who went from being the granddaughter's best friend, crawling around on the floor with them, playing dress up and makeup, to becoming the scary grandma and becoming disruptive to the entire family. We live in a duplex, which is one apartment on top, one apartment on the bottom. One of our sons and his family lives up there. And she'd get home and she'd run upstairs, bang on the door, 20 times a night, and they stopped answering the door. They were either eating dinner, the kids had to do their homework, but she became the scary grandma. And I called up, I talked to the people at the daycare, and they loved her there. She'd help them set up the activities, she'd help them break down the activities, but it would be a different story when she'd come home, never know what we were going to get. And one day my son calls me upstairs. His wife is from Oregon, and he's telling me about this job that he's interviewing for. And cool, that's great. And then he says to me, it's in Ashland, Oregon. And I felt like I was being abandoned. And he says, it's the hardest decision I ever had to make, my mother or my family. And I have to choose my family. Just
Wow.
so you know, he did not end up moving. What I did, I didn't want to do anything just because it was expedient for me. That just didn't seem right. I mean, this is my wife. But I called up her psychologist, I called up her neurologist, I called up her nurse practitioner, and I said, why is it that they all love her when she goes to daycare, but when she gets home, it's totally different? And they said, because at daycare, she has structure, and at home, it's like the Wild West. And they all felt it was probably time for Sonia to go into a memory care facility. So with their blessing, I moved Sonia. She was there for almost 2 years. She's been at home now for over a year, and I'm glad she is. The Capgras syndrome disappeared after a few months. I would visit her every day. And over a period of time, all that anger and tension dissipated. And the feelings on my part certainly became much more tender. I look forward to seeing Sonia. I look forward now. I mean, she's in daycare now, and I feel kind of bad saying this. I don't know why. And please tell me if there's no reason to feel bad. But I know most caregivers, their idea of respite is getting away from their loved one. My idea of respite is picking up Sonia at the end of the day, hanging out with her on the weekends, getting together with all of our friends, because I can focus on her and I don't have to think about everything else during the day. So she is my respite. Anyway, I hope that gives you a little
Yes, so,
background.
so much to unpack there because, first of all, 2020, COVID, that
Mhm.
whole dynamic and variable. But something that I wrote down from your course, you said shift your caregiver perspective.
Mhm.
And so many times I'm asked, what to do, what's the first thing that you recommend, etc. And even for myself personally, in my own walk, my mother has vascular dementia, is
Mhm.
accepting that, this icon, this loved one, this one that you hold dear is who they are today, you know,
Right.
not who you want them to be, who they were to you, accepting who they are now. So,
Mhm.
how do you recommend to caregivers to shift their perspective? But moreover, how did you get there reconciling that anger, the abandonment, the resentment, the
Mhm.
reconciliation of wanting to let your children go and understanding that they have to make their own decisions for their nuclear families while you had to make decisions for yourself and your wife?
Well, I knew I had owned for a very short period of time a senior helpers franchise. Unfortunately, by the time California issued our license and we opened our doors at April 1st, 2020, you were talking about COVID. So nobody wanted anybody in their house. Nobody wanted to go to anybody's house. So that lasted about a year. But what I learned from that experience was about the burden of care and the toll it takes on the caregiver, the psychological, the physical, the financial, the emotional stressors. And I read an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association that said family caregivers have a 63% higher risk of dying than their peers who aren't caregivers.
That's it.
I
Or
was just,
or the patient themselves, or the loved
yeah,
one themselves. Yeah,
oftentimes the caregiver is the one that ends up in the hospital. And I was determined not to let that happen to me. I didn't want it, terrible enough it's going to shorten her life. I didn't want it to shorten my life at all. So I thought, okay, let me research this. I started looking online, figuring, well, there's got to be answers. This isn't a new issue. And on website after website, I found the same information. Take a break, find 15 minutes, meditate, exercise. It's all helpful information, but it doesn't get at my core feelings and emotions. It had nothing to do with that. And I realized After several months, well, I realized that I had to do this myself because mine's the only brain that can change. My loved one, Sonia, her brain's not going to change. It's going to get worse. So after several months of researching, writing, trying different possible solutions, asking for spiritual guidance, I finally found the answer and arrived at what I call my heaven island. It's a state of peace, acceptance, and clarity where I could care for Sonia without losing myself in the process. And what I decided to do was to see if I might be able to help other caregivers. I didn't know what was out there. I looked on Facebook and I found dozens and dozens of groups for family caregivers with thousands of members. And I read their comments. I'm exhausted. I'm depressed. When is this going to end? I can't do this. One woman was even contemplating suicide because it was easier to take care of her husband. I mean, it made me want to cry. So I created this course, Caregiver Mastery. It's a step-by-step roadmap designed to help caregivers eliminate their stress, anger, resentment, and guilt. And look, I'm a caregiver. So just so whoever's listening understands, it's not some giant time-consuming program. I didn't create it to add more to anyone's plate. I created it to lift some of the weight off their shoulders. So the lessons are short and practical. And if you apply what I teach in just minutes a day, I guarantee you'll start to feel a real difference in 2 or 3 weeks. So I don't know.
What's your roadmap there? So, to play the skeptic, how are you different? How is your advice different? Without giving all the goods away, right? But what would endear somebody to the course naturally, knowing you are actually caregiving? But what's your key, takeaways from the course, your key offerings or tips for your roadmap itself?
Okay, one thing to hit on what you already said is acceptance. You can be the best caregiver in the entire world. It's not going to change the progression of the disease. You have to accept that, unfortunately. You also have to realize that you're doing the best you can. I don't care what any of your friends or family, the armchair generals who have no idea what it is to walk in your shoes, tell you. You're doing the best you can, and that's good enough. And you have to believe that about yourself. One day I was driving down to visit Sonia, and on the side of a building was painted a quote by Maya Angelou. And it said, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
really the premise of my course, helping people change their mindset. It's a simple concept, but it's not a simple thing to put into action. Another thing is to recognize that your thoughts create your feelings, but your thoughts are changeable. It's not, what would it be for caregivers if they learned that all the stress that they're undergoing is all based on their thoughts? It's not based on the behavior of their loved one. So your loved one, it doesn't create your thoughts. You create your thoughts, and you can change how you want to look at things to make your life easier. Another thing, by you becoming more calm, less agitated, by extension, you have a better relationship with your loved one because they feed off of our feelings. If we're upset all the time, they're going to be upset. When Sonia first came home, she used to go through the house and turn on all the water faucets. All right, sure, it bothered me. And I could sit there and explain to her that, hey, this is a precious resource and it costs money. Do you think that would do anything? I could yell at her. Do you think that would do anything? The only thing any of that would do is upset me, increase my blood pressure, increase my stress. So I just go and turn them off. I don't say a word. And everything I do with Sonia, look, your loved one's going to do stuff that's going to push your buttons. Again, you're the only one in charge of your buttons. They aren't. And I look at everything from, okay, I don't want this to, again, reduce my health, reduce my longevity. So I look at everything, how I'm going to react. And part of that is being mindful of your feelings before you blow up. And then just thinking, this isn't going to help me. I don't gain anything from this. And it certainly hurts my relationship with Sonia, with my loved one. So there's no purpose to it. And you got to just change the way you look at things. And that's what my course has to deal with. And the people that have taken my course, the reviews I've gotten have far exceeded what I thought, where they told me that I just feel like, the burden's been lifted off my shoulders. People are saying to me, "Hey, you're smiling again." I mean, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And again, they have a better relationship with their loved one.
Yeah.
Attention, healthcare professionals. Are you looking to enhance your skills and stay ahead in your field? Look no further than our ACCME accredited CME courses. Whether you're a doctor, physician assistant, or nurse practitioner, our courses are tailored to meet your needs. Why focus on geriatric education, you ask? Because regardless of your specialty, geriatric care is becoming increasingly essential. As our population ages, the demand for competent healthcare professionals in geriatrics is higher than ever before. We don't stop there. Our courses also empower caregivers to partner with you in the care of your patients. We believe that by fostering a strong partnership between healthcare clinicians and caregivers, we can provide the best possible care for our elderly population. So join our Impactful Caregiving community today. Sign up for our ACCME accredited course instruction and take the first step towards advancing your career and making a difference in the lives of your patients.
With their loved one.
Yeah. So I want to circle back to something you said in terms of, the respite for you with Sonia is seeing her, spending time, gathering with friends, etc.
Right.
Is that heaven per se, uh, a reintroduction because it's a new day for her every day? You understand what I mean in terms of it's a reintroduction of you to her and a new experience for her every day? Is that the heaven in the respite?
No, the heaven is the peace and the acceptance that I have. That's my heaven. I no longer get upset with the things she does. First of all, it's just pointless. Second of all, it doesn't benefit her. It doesn't benefit me. So that's really my heaven island. And it can be accomplished or arrived at by anybody. It's a different way of looking at things. Again, remember, you can be the most incredible caregiver in the world. You're not going to change the progression of the disease. That's the first thing you have to
Yeah.
accept. It's
Yeah.
beyond all of us to do anything about. On that note, I can't believe this disease was discovered in 1906 and there still isn't a cure, but that's a whole nother story. That's unbelievable to
With
me.
as much technology and
Yeah,
innovation,
yeah,
yeah, I get it. I get it. You know what I really want to drill down to
sure.
is the male caregiver. I have
Oh,
so
okay.
many men that are like, it's incredible. We ignore the male support. And when I say
hmm
that, the broad stroke of what that looks like in society,
hmm
approaching Father's Day, the real true, you know, caregiver support from, fathers, spouses in multi-generational situations that are having to handle the
hmm
in-law with dementia or just the generalized caregiver role. And I have struggled with this because clearly, I can speak to it up to a point, right?
hmm
But what are the unique needs of the male caregiver that we may not be capturing or addressing?
Well, look, in this society, men are different from women in their thought processes. We're problem solvers. And that's something that men have to realize you can't solve this. You can't fix this. This isn't like, fixing a cabinet door or something like that. You have to get to the point where you realize that, again, it's beyond your ability to do anything, accept it, and just, to me, the whole process is the same. You have to change your mindset. You have to look at things differently. And it may be more difficult for men to realize that this isn't something they can do anything about. But that's really the fact of the matter.
Yeah.
It's One of the things I tell people is you have to stop fighting against the way things are. I know it's easier said than done, especially when you're in the thick of caregiving, but when we stop resisting reality, when we stop wishing things were different or trying to force them to change, we relieve an enormous portion of the stress that caregiving brings. And for myself, for a long time, I didn't see that. I was constantly frustrated with Sonia. So like I was thinking, well, why does she keep doing that when I've asked her not to? Why doesn't she listen to me? Is she doing this on purpose? I mean, of course she's not. And of course, all caregivers think those things. That's why we get upset. So you have to understand there's a cause and effect relationship that's at play here. Depending on the stage of dementia that your loved one is in, they may no longer be able to reason, to see the logic in what you're saying, or to understand the why behind your requests. Or so you could yell, scream, plead with them. All that accomplishes is upsetting both of you. So there's no point to that. And again, that applies to both men and women.
And life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beyond outside
Absolutely.
the context of caregiving, absolutely. Just a
Oh,
good
yeah.
rule of thumb for life and interpersonal relationships and leadership and all the things. Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And again, if you hang on to that stress, it's just going to take a toll on your health and your
Yeah.
well-being. And,
Yeah.
I want to live as long as I was meant to live. I want to live another 30 years. I'm going to be 72 in a couple of weeks. I want to be
Fabulous.
102.
It's
Yeah.
fabulous. So tell me, as a grandpa,
Okay.
you know, we went from, favorite grandmom to scary grandmom.
Right.
And now how are we educating the kids, and how has that dynamic and relationship changed for the better as a result of educating the kids on, this is why grandmom behaves this way?
Well, that's really been up to the parents to do that. When the kids were younger, they started off with the books, what's happening to grandma. Um, and the ones that live upstairs from us are the closest because the others, they don't live so nearby. One is in San Diego, we're in Los Angeles, one's in another city. So they're the closest. And the oldest one, she'll be 12 in September, she was the one who really got on the floor and played all the time with Sonia. And for a while, she backed off because it bothered her to see what was happening and scared her, and grandma's not the same. And little by little on her own, she's come back around. Her sister, who's a year younger, 2 years younger, she's always been there. She comes in, hi grandma, holds her hand and all of that. I mean, we don't play as much as we all used to play together,
Mhm.
but I guess it's a natural thing. They're suffering a loss. One thing I didn't realize until my son pointed it out to me. I thought, Sonia's never going to hear about their first dates or graduations or getting married or being a great grandmother. And he said to me, but the kids aren't going to know that either. And I thought, wow, I was looking at it just from Sonia's side, but he's right. From the kids' side, they're missing out as well.
Yeah, it's so, and even in my own situation, I have a 7 and a 12-year-old. Hi,
Okay.
and Ellis, because they love to listen in. But their character that they have shown and demonstrated when we speak about the emotions and the anger and the irritability and the
Mhm.
upsetness, they've shown more character than myself at times
That
in
good for
the
them.
approach
Yeah.
of care of my mother. It's incredible to witness. And
Mhm.
but to your point, being mindful that they're walking in a journey as well.
Right.
And there's emotions and education and conversation that has to be had around just different dynamics. So it's just so important.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
tell me, as we land the plane, give me some information. How does someone join your Facebook group? Do you do online consulting? We're an international podcast, so
Hmm.
do you have any, online remote offerings? Tell us about the Caregiver Mastery course, etc.
Well, the Caregiver Mastery course can be found at caregivermasterycourse.com. That's simply a landing page. My Facebook group, and everybody's welcome to join. It's free. I post twice a week. I put videos up there. My Facebook group was at facebook.com/groups/4 family caregivers, FOR, 4 family caregivers.
Love it. Love it.
And, if anybody wants to, I'll put it out there. If anybody wants to contact me directly, my email address is rick, R-I-C-K, @4familycaregivers.com. I'll be happy to answer, offer any help I can. Absolutely.
Yes, and I will share this conversation as well with patients and families. I think it's important to, have different perspectives. I'd love to join your Facebook group. I understand that too, because, as a clinician, I'm barred from these groups.
Seriously? I didn't know that.
I go in, these groups have 40,000, 30,000 members, and you'll see a question. Obviously, I'm not there to provide medical advice, right? But I even had an experience where a member said, I don't want this person in here. They're here to sell whatever.
Right.
And I said, I'm sorry. Like my mother has vascular dementia.
Yeah, you're just trying to help.
I'm walking this journey as well. So, there is also the leader, right? That also is in a caregiver role. So there are people like myself that are carrying a weight that is completely invisible in public figure life, that also need to have safe spaces and feel human, and to say, hey, what's your perspective here? So
you're welcome to join my group.
So I have a group myself that I haven't really very active in as of late, but nevertheless, there's spaces and needs for, healthy conversation and support and community. So I applaud you.
Can I say one other thing, because it's important to me?
Of course.
Got to look for the laughter as well. Not to laugh at our loved ones, but they do funny things sometimes. And those things become endearing. They become memories. One time, Sonia and I were in the International House of Pancakes, IHOP, and we were getting ready to leave. I was paying, and Sonia snatched a pancake off somebody else's plate. And she's eating it. And I'm so grateful. He was very nice. Everybody we've ever met, they understand Sonia isn't harmless. He was very nice. And I apologize, of course. And in my haste to get out of the restaurant, I opened the only alarmed door. So the sirens are going off. Everybody's looking at me, and Sonia's just contentedly eating her piece of pancake.
Throw it down on that pancake.
Yeah. So you got to look for the humor.
Yeah. And give yourself grace in
exactly.
it all. Well, this has been a pleasure. I really thank you for your time and sharing your journey and your heart and your family with our audience. It's important work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was very nice meeting you, Dr. Bell.
Thank you.
Great information right from the source. For more information on how to caregive like a boss, check out impactfulcaregiving.com. Want to be a guest on the show? Contact us at CarePod@impactfulcaregiving.com.